Welcome to class, everyone. Today we're going to go over angles in the plane, and also we're going to talk about complementary angles. Part one is going to be on angles in the plane. This is for day 5, slideshow number 2, angles in the plane. All right, so we're going to talk about the different types of angles, how to find equivalent angles with vertical angles. We're also going to talk about the definitions of complementary and supplementary angles and some rules about parallel lines when they are cut by what's called a transversal. So we have these different types of angles. Um, I think most of you probably remember the angles that you learned about, maybe in elementary school or middle school, acute and obtuse angles. Acute angles are less than 90, obtuse angles are greater than 90 degrees. This would be an acute angle here, and we can read this angle with these 3 different letters. We can read it as ABC, angle ABC. We can read it as CBA. And in this case, there's no other angles next to B, so we can also just call this angle B. We also refer to the pointy side. The very tip here is called a vertex. So that's how we can describe angles. And again, these are some rules I think most of you probably remember from earlier grades. Acute angles are less than 90, obtuse is greater than 90, uh, and not 180 degrees. And straight angle or just a straight line, we still say that's an angle. It's equal to 180 degrees. Right angles are 90 degrees, and sometimes we write right angles as perpendicular. Perpendicular looks something like that. That's the symbol for perpendicular, and that means 90 degrees. Next, we're going to talk about vertical and adjacent. So if 2 angles are vertical to one another, that means that they are equivalent. So if we have 2 lines that are crossing, um, this angle and that angle are opposite of each other. Those are called vertical angles, and those are going to be equivalent. We can show angle equivalency by putting a little mark like that and showing that they both have 1 mark. Notice I drew this angle a little bit bigger than that one, but still just showing that there's 1 mark means that it's the same thing. So that's how you can keep track of angles on the test. If you're using scratch paper and you want to make sure that you have the right answer, you can keep track of which angle is which by putting little marks on them. I'm going to use colors today, though, when I can. These 2 angles are the same as well. These are also vertical angles, and we could put 2 marks like that to show that they're equivalent. So we can read these angles as a set of 3 letters. So let's look at the very top one first. That angle is ABD, or we can say it's DBA. It is not just angle B, though. If we said angle B, that would be very confusing. We wouldn't know which of these 4 angles we're talking about because B shares the vertex with all 4 of these angles. The key takeaway is these are vertical angles are congruent. Now look at the red and the black angles. These angles are next to each other, and another word for something that's next to is adjacent. So the 2 angles adjacent would be ABD and DBE. And these 2 adjacent angles, they form what's called a linear pair. If we add these together, they equal the straight line, which is equal to 180 degrees. So that's called a linear pair. Linear pairs are 180 degrees. Another way we can describe it is that these 2 angles are supplementary. That's another way to say 180 degrees. And that's the next section here. So I'm going to skip ahead to Actually, supplementary is not on here. I suppose we'll have to go just to the next slide. Complementary angles mean that they add up to 90 degrees. And there might be a slight typo on this slide here. Complementary angles, so they always add to 90. In the diagram, AB is perpendicular to BD. So this first part is correct. And if I remember correctly, there was a small typo here, but that part's correct. AB is perpendicular to BD. That means that ABD, here it is. Here's the typo. So ABD is the entire piece. It's all of this. ABD and CDB, they're not complementary. It's actually supposed to say ABC. So that means that there's ABC, that's this part here. And CBD is this part here. So brown plus blue equals 90, and that's what makes them complementary. So that's just a slight typo there. Just be aware of that if you're going over the slides again for reviewing them. Supplementary angles, I think I mentioned already, they add up to 180 degrees. So if we have this first angle ACD and the second angle DCB, we add those together, they should equal 180 degrees. And they are also adjacent. I think I mentioned that already as well. They form what's called a linear pair. So that's supplementary. Let's look at some algebraic examples because we have to solve some of these algebraically. So they'll give us a statement that tells us what the angle is in terms of x or in terms of y or some other letter. And we have to figure out what that letter is, and then we plug in the value to figure out the total degrees. So ABC is that one. That's 5x minus 23. DBE is this one, and it's 3x plus 7. And some of you might know how to solve this already. If you do, that's great. These are vertical angles, so they are congruent. So because they're equal, we just write an equivalent statement with algebra. So we write 5x minus 23 equals 3x plus 7. And we just solve the algebra. That part's easy enough. I think everybody knows how to solve this algebraically, but I'll just write out all the steps here. So we get x equals 15. Now be careful, this is not our final answer. Sometimes they'll even have 15 as one of the answer choices, and that's there to kind of trip you up. So make sure you're reading the question very carefully. That's a very common thing that happens on the SAT is they'll put what x equals as one of the answer choices, but they're not actually asking you for what x is. Here they're asking you what is ABD. So ABD is 5x minus 23. X is 15. So we're just going to plug in 15 for x. We get 75 minus 23. And that gives us 52 degrees. Now that's 52 degrees for that angle. That means this one's also 52 degrees. So our next question, I believe, is going to ask us some other information based on what we just found here. So that's how you find what x is and then what the missing angle is. For the next part, this just has everything written out here. So we have 52 as our final answer. Oh, I didn't actually solve this correctly. I apologize. Let me go back here. So that's not what the question was asking either. So this is 52 degrees, and this was 52 degrees. It says, what's the measure of ABD? So ABD is this angle here. So because the 52 and the red angle form a linear pair, now we can write one more equation. and this is 52 plus, I'm going to say the red angle is y, just because we've already used x earlier. And that equals 180 degrees because that's a linear pair. Now we minus 52 on both sides. And 180 minus 52 is going to give us 128. So this angle B is 128 degrees. So again, make sure you're double checking what the question is asking. I was reading through this very quickly, and I was making an assumption that it was talking about that angle, and it was not. So we actually had to do two different steps for this one problem. So 52 might also be an answer choice on the SAT. So just be mindful of that, and just be double checking what the angle is that you're solving for is on the test. Okay, the next part is rules of parallel lines. If you know these rules already, that's awesome. If you don't, it's not too bad to learn what they all are or to find their equivalencies. So for any two angles, they either equal each other, or when you add them together, they equal 180 degrees. So that and that is equal. 1 and 3 is equal. And that's the vertical angle theorem. So they either equal each other or they add up to 180. So those two are equal, but also these two are equal. These are called corresponding angles. So now if you know all of that, you can figure out the rest of all of these numbers. So we know that 5 is the same as 7. And because all of those are the same, we can say 4 equals 2. 2 corresponds with 6, which also equals 8. So there's only 2 different angle measures from all 8 of these angles. We're going to see a lot of different combinations of things that are equal. But let's go over what all these are. So the first thing I showed you was vertical angles, but that's actually not one of the things that we technically memorize with these parallel lines and transversals. The first thing we memorize or learn about is that these are corresponding. They correspond and they're the same angle measure. The next one is called, I'll just pick the next one here. And these are alternating around the transversal. The transversal is L, or maybe it's I. But this line right here, that's the transversal. So the angles are alternating on that line on each side, and they're on the outside of the parallel lines. These are called alternating exterior angles or alternate exterior angles. Another example of that is 4 and 6. They're alternating from that middle line, and they're on the outside of the parallel line. Okay, the next one is alternating interior angles. Those are also the same. 3 and 5 are the same, and 2 and 8 are the same. So they're alternating and they're on the inside of the parallel lines. So if you know those and the corresponding angles and the vertical angles, you will know all the rules for these. And this is a diagram showing us what all these rules are. But I have already drawn what these all are. So I think maybe I might have left out one of these, and that's same side interior. So 3 and 8. Those are on the same side. They're on the inside of the parallel lines, and they add up to 180 degrees. These are on the same side, and they add up to 180 degrees. So those are same side interior angles. Same side exterior angles also add up to 180 degrees. But if you know these basic rules and you're able to mark all of these, Like I know you probably don't have colors with the test, you probably just have a pencil. But if you're able to mark these, then you can just figure out what all of them are right away. So if you just mark the vertical angles, I'm trying to do that pink the same color there, but it's not quite the same color. If you mark them all that way, then you can figure out whatever the question is asking you to find a lot easier. All right, let's look at an algebraic example for this next part here. So this says AGD is 2x plus 3. That's that angle there. Just read them in order. 2x plus 3. And GHF is that one. That's 3x minus 48. And we want to find EHG. That is, oops, EHG is that angle. So we want to find what that angle is. So we have to identify, is 2x plus 3 and 3x minus 48, are those equal to each other, or do they add up to 180 degrees? Those are really the only two options that we have with the parallel lines. And these are corresponding. You can also tell because they're both obtuse angles. So we have two obtuse angles. And with these diagrams, with the parallel line and the transversal, we either have an obtuse angle bigger than 90 or an acute angle smaller than 90. And these two are both bigger than 90. So because we have two angles that are bigger than 90, we know these are both obtuse, and we know that they both have to be equal. So if that's easier for you to remember, that's great. So here's 3x minus 48. We're just setting these equal to each other, and we're just going to solve for x again. So it's minus 2x, 3 equals x minus 48, plus 48 on both sides. And we should get 51 equals x. Now, again, we have to figure out what the question's asking us. It says, what's EHG? That's the green angle. So let's figure out first what this black angle is next to the green angle. That's 3 times, that was 51 minus 48. That's 153 minus 48. That gives us 105 degrees. So that's what this is. I'm just going to cross all that out. So we're done with that now. That's 105 degrees. Now, if this forms a linear pair with the green angle, so it's 180 degrees, that means that that green angle, it's got to be 75. So that's how we can determine if angles are equal or if they add up to 180. And that's just the solution there. All right, so again, the small angles, they have the same measurement. So with these diagrams, the small angles are always going to be the same, and the big angles are always going to be the same. That's the key takeaway from this. But if you know all these rules from geometry class, that is awesome. All right, so I think people needed some more time. People are needing more time, I'm noticing. Noticing that maybe like 1 or 2 people are getting done. So we're gonna try this for we're gonna try 25 minutes for this. But again, if you're done early, that's fantastic. If you are done before then, that's great. Just go ahead and work on Unit 5 on Khan Academy if you get done early.